Good afternoon. Welcome to the session of our Recoil Trader training. We're going to take an in-depth look at our beta options as well as some of our other settings to give you an in-depth look at how they function and what they will help you to accomplish so you can decide if you want to enable these settings for your testing. Now, you may notice these are beta options. They do have a warning, do not use on live accounts. These are for testing purposes and to get feedback and see if these are the type of settings we'd like to fully enact in future updates of Recoil Trader. So first, we're going to take a look at our check extreme level setting. Now, this will disqualify a momentum if the blue line is outside of an extreme. So if it's below minus 135 for a short trade, or if it's above 135 for a long trade, even if all other rules are qualified for that particular entry, that rule alone will disqualify the trade. Next, we have our check EMA order. This will not enter a trade unless the EMAs are in the correct order. Now, Recoil Trader, as you may know, is slightly different than a momentum trade, but enabling this check will cause it to trade similar to the way we would trade a momentum trade manually. So enabling this, we won't enter any momentum trades unless we have a corresponding background. Our check OHLC, this will check the high or low of the day, so we will not trade into the high or low of the day. And let's go ahead and enable recoil so we can see what this looks like. And this is a historical example, but just to give you an idea of what this will look like. So notice that even after we have broken through the low of the day here, Recoil still checks and sees that the close of this bar is the same as the current low of the day. So it will not enter into any of these momentum trades. Now, the setting can be helpful for avoiding trading directly into the low of the day. But what if after we break through the low of the day and then we feel more confident about getting into a run at our first opportunity? We'll come back to our settings here, disable recoil, and then we'll enable our allow breakouts. So the allow breakout setting will basically enable recoil to take a trade after the price has already moved past the low of the day. And let's take a look at the difference here. So if we see here, we did break through the low of the day here, and now our first momentum short entry, we would be able to enter this trade. And this is due to the allow breakouts enabled. So it can be a helpful setting to avoid bouncing off the low of the day. But once we break through and we have a bit more confidence that the trend will continue, the allow breakout setting will let us hop into trades as long as all other rules are qualified. And we'll take a look at some of our other settings. Our move to break even, as long as this is true, after our initial profit target is hit, we will adjust the stop to break even. If you wish to have a different stop after we hit our profit target, we'll set move break even to false, and the number of ticks we wish to move instead from break even. So we'll set our move to break even to false and our post target stop tick to 4. And let's go ahead and take a look at the difference here. So this qualified trade, the entry would be the DPI that creates that bar, which is 52.10. And normally after hitting profit target, Recoil would set the stop to break even. But if we look at our post target stop, it is at 52.14, which is the amount of ticks we set in our post target stop tick setting. Next, we have our enable trade timer. What this will do is if you have a lunch break set, Recoil will flatten any trades it is currently in if you are heading into the lunch period. And the same applies for heading into its designated stop time. So if you have the Recoil Trader set to stop trading at 4 p.m. Eastern and it is currently in a trade, once the clock reaches 4 p.m., it will flatten that trade, regardless of its position. Next, we have our ignore 200 EMA setting. This will simply determine whether Recoil will take a trade into the 200 EMA or ignore the 200 EMA. So if you wish to ignore the 200 EMA, if you find that that isn't as effective for that market, you can set this to true and Recoil will take trades into the 200 EMA. If we set this to false, Recoil will not take a trade into the 200 unless it has enough room to reach its profit target. Our initial stop ticks is 22, and this can be adjusted, and you may want to do some testing and analyze some data before you change this, as we have found the 22 tick stop to be very effective for giving us enough wiggle room. So before you change it to 15 or 18 or whatever you think will work better for you, you will want to either do some market replay, back testing, or run it in sim, as there may be different stop settings that work better for different markets. And then we have our target ticks. This determines your initial profit target, which is set to 6 ticks by default, and the total trade size. Default set to 3 contracts. Recoil is programmed to take 2/3 of the contracts off at your profit target. So if you're trading 2 contracts, it will take 1 off at profit target and leave the second one off as a runner. If you have 5 or 6 contracts, it will take 3 off at profit target. If you're trading 5 contracts, it will take 3 off at profit target and leave 2 on as a runner. If you're trading 6 contracts, it will take 4 contracts off at your profit target and leave 2 on as your runner contracts. And next, I would like to go over the stop method for Recoil. So I'm going to enable this and we'll analyze this historical trade. All right, so here we have our qualified Recoil trade. Recoil puts our entry at the red DPI and our stop at 22 ticks from that price. So the entry is at 52.10. The initial stop is at 52.32, or 22 ticks away from our entry price. After we hit our initial profit target of 6 ticks, we'll sell 2 of our contracts, and then the stop is adjusted to break even. So we see here that the stop is set at 52.10. Then once the market starts to move in our direction and we plot another color bar, Recoil will place a stop at the high or low of the previous bar. So since we're trending short, Recoil will place a trailing stop at the high of the previous bar. So after bar 16 plots, we can see that the stop is set to the high of bar 15. And after bar 17 plots, our stop will be set to the high of bar 16, and so on and so forth. Now this does initially leave us an opportunity for the runner to give back some ticks. But we found this to be a very effective method in taking part of these very long runs and riding over any wicks that we may encounter. So if we come down and take a look at this bar 30 and 31, on bar 31 we did have a wick, but we see that our stop set at the high of bar 30 did give us enough wiggle room to ride over that. And our next stop will be at the high of bar 31, giving us a little bit more wiggle room in case we encounter another wick. And then it will revert back to the high of the bar until we get another wick, but we still have enough wiggle room to ride over that. And we'll continue trailing this method until we get stopped out by a turn bar or by a wick that is beyond our stop. And some things to note about the stop placement is occasionally you may see a stop outside of where it looks like it should be placed. And this is due to typically the market moving too fast. And so Recoil attempts to put a stop that is outside of the bid-ask spread. So when this happens, Recoil attempts to put a stop at a certain price, but it cannot. It will put a stop at the next best price that it can enter. And once it can place a stop at the correct level, it will continue to do so. But occasionally the market moves too quick and it's just not possible. And some other things to know about Recoil placing orders is that much like manual trading, where we place the orders, we don't actually control if it gets filled. And we're not always guaranteed to get filled. And there may be times where an order is rejected by the broker for reasons like it being outside of the bid-ask spread, or perhaps the market moved very rapidly, and so the order is now not at a price which could be filled. Where, for example, if you're in a long trade and you try to put a stop limit order below the market, it will be rejected since that is not in a range that the order will be accepted by the broker. Some specific market conditions that will prevent Recoil from entering the order, but it will attempt to put one in at the next closest price for a stop. And much like manual trading as well, the orders are not always guaranteed to be filled. So there are protections in place where if we put an entry order to get in a trade, but it is not filled and the market continues to move, Recoil will remove that order after a color bar plots. Just to protect in case there is a possible reversal. We don't want to get filled on a short trade when the market reverses and starts heading long and get immediately stopped out. Thank you for joining us for an in-depth look at our new beta settings and some of our other updated settings for Recoil Trader. Join us in our next video as we take an in-depth look at how to do market replay backtesting.